Hello and welcome to the Liverpool Connection podcast. I'm your host Daz and I've got my co-host Steve with me, and today we've got two special guests, Jeff Goulding and George Scott, that wrote a book. And I cannot wait to get into this. I'll let George, seeing as you're the main one, I will let you introduce the name of the book.
Well, the name of the book is The Lost Shankly Boy, and I've got Jeff to thank for that. He's the one that came up with the title. And,
nice.
I've got Jeff to thank for a lot, but that's another story. You know, I'm glad you mentioned Jeff's book coming out tomorrow, because that's going to be quite a big event for him as well. The book, I think it's his fourth or fifth book, you know, and it's going to be a nice big seller because it's really, really fantastic title for a start. You know, Champions Under Lockdown, Red Odyssey 3, Jurgen and the Holy Grail. So he's got that. He's been writing for the last, however long, 6 months. He's been helping me with my book for the last 6 months. So how he finds the time, I don't know. So I'm ever so grateful.
Well, we're going to get Jeff back on in hopefully a couple of weeks to go over his book and everything, because definitely excited about that. But let's start with a bit of a backstory, George.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as the book's concerned, creating the book, it came from Jeff and I meeting up at the Shankly Hotel last November only. And we hadn't met up until then. And I think he'd read one or two articles that I'd written on the internet, and then he put something onto one of the websites over here. I think it was Tales of Anfield Road. Can't remember. Anyway, I gave him a bell and I said, it'd be nice if we just met up for a coffee. So we met up for a coffee, and it was in the same day that Liverpool beat Aston Villa with a last-minute goal by Marnie. At Villa Park. I can remember that. It was the second last week in November. And that's where the book started. And Jeff said to me, you know, there's a book here. Would you let me write it with you? And I said, well, I'd be absolutely delighted if you think it'd be worth writing. And it all started from that, really. I'd written a lot myself anyway. There's a lot of material there, which I bombarded Jeff with, you know, and he bombarded stuff back to me, and we just ping pong across the internet, really. And it's amazing, really. We produced this book, which I'm really proud of, and I think Jeff is as well. It's my autobiography, really, from the moment that, my autobiography from the beginning. But it starts really from my time in Aberdeen, and then when I came to Liverpool as a 15-year-old boy to sign for Bill Shankly, one of, if not his first signing. Sammy Reid was his first professional signing, but there were 3 of us, or 4 of us, that were his first actual signings, apprentices. So I was only 15 when I left Aberdeen, very young. And his story really is about my fight to try and get into that first team at Anfield, which ultimately, unfortunately, wasn't successful. Nearly was. It was on the brink, but it was hardly a surprise, really, because the team they had at the time, every single one of them was an international and a legend, still are. And there was no substitutes at all in those days, so there was no 18-man squads. It was like 11 people playing every week in 1 12th man. So the story really is about my time at Anfield and the impression Bill Shankly made on me as a person at that young age, which has stayed with me for the rest of my life, really. And I've lived by the standards he set at that time, and it's proved to be very successful. So the story really takes me from Aberdeen, fairly poor background, to Anfield at the start of the glory days, when Shankly revolutionised the club from a team which was middle of the second division, actually going nowhere. Hardly anybody had heard of Liverpool in Scotland. The only thing I knew about Liverpool was that Bill Shankly, who was the manager, had taken Dennis Law to Huddersfield Town and made him a star. And Dennis was from Aberdeen, and I knew Dennis's family. So other than that, really, I didn't know much about Liverpool. And obviously in the book, it explains how I managed to come to Liverpool, what happened when I arrived, the players I met, some players who were gifted individuals, but never quite made it, had to seek their fortune in other clubs. And the legends of the game, the ones everybody would know, like Tommy Lawrence, Roger Hunt, Ian St. John, Callaghan, and some of the older players as well, people maybe not heard of, like Ephraim Longworth, who was in the Invincibles team in 1920s. You know, so it's a whole picture of the boot room, description of the stadium. I don't want to give too much away about the book, except to say that it's really, Jeff takes a lot of credit as far as I'm concerned, because if I had written the book, it would have been written slightly differently, like an ex-footballer writes. But Jeff's he's an artist, really, as far as writing is concerned, and he put it into the appropriate chapters. And it blew me away when we got the final product. And I think it'll be enjoyed by Liverpool fans, to be honest, as a story, apart from anything else, and as a historical memory of how Liverpool started to turn the thing around, how Shankly turned everything around, moving on to Paisley, and then Fagan, and ultimately to where we are today with Jurgen.
Yeah, we had Kieran Smith on not too long ago from the Liverpool Historical Society, and he's read your book, and he said absolutely amazing, and I for one can't wait to get it. He was just saying, like, the stories are just like well put together. You know, it's a fantastic book, and I was a bit jealous when Kieran said he'd already got your book. I was like, ooh, you cheeky bugger.
I think the reason for that was we gave a couple of people initially the PDF so they could actually do a review of the book and give us an indication of what their impression was. And in fact, Kieran's review, along with 4 or 5 other editorial reviews, are in front of the book, and they are quite stunning. But I mean, Kieran's a fantastic guy. I mean, the work he puts into that website, historical, it's amazing, really, for what he does. You know, and it's a wonderful website and for Liverpool fans, and I hope more people will join into it, because it really is worth getting involved in.
Steve, go ahead.
Hey, George and Jeff, thank you for coming onto the show. You know, we've been trading messages back and forth for about a month now, and we've been very excited to finally get to this day that we get to speak to you guys personally and talk about the books. And you know, as Daz mentioned, that we had met Kieran before and then had him on the podcast, and as part of this podcast and also part of my role as the president of our supporters club here in Austin, one of the main things that we've tried to do is to share the history of Liverpool, to show people that it's just not about the today, that there's more to it than just the results of yesterday's game or this past season. But the reason why this club is special is because of all the history that's entailed, you know, and I don't know many clubs in the world that have the type of past history that's also is so closely in line with the city itself, you know, with the social aspects of the city. And I was wondering if you can maybe expound on that, how the socialism, or not, I don't want to say socialism because a lot of times that has a negative connotation, but just the social aspect of the club when Shankly came and then Paisley brought it even further, and now where it is today, as some of the stuff in the news this past week, you know, about the disparaging comments about Liverpool and how the city has really come together and said, no, you're wrong. This is us, and we're going to be inclusive. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Well, Shankly came from a little village, a small village in southwest Scotland called Glenbuck. It was a mining village, and it was just sheer poverty. I mean, it was either the mines or it was the dole. You know? And that village produced a huge number of footballers. I think Bill had 4 brothers who were all footballers, maybe even 5, I don't know. So Shankly was steeped in socialism. I mean, that was his ethos. His thing was everybody together, everybody pulled together for the greater good. Yes, he admired gifted individuals, but he knew that these gifted individuals could not perform without the backing of the team, you know. And so he loved the supporters. His teams played through him for the supporters. That was his main driving force. He knew they worked every day from Monday to Friday, mostly in menial jobs on Merseyside, in factories and the docks and all that, you know. And the big thrill was to go to Anfield on a Saturday, get in that Kop amongst 28,000 other people. They were all brothers in that Kop, you know, everybody together. In fact, when I was first there, the Kop had a piece of it which was just the children. It was called the Boys' Pen. And when they sang, it was like a boys' choir, you know, on the top right-hand corner of the Kop. So Liverpool has always been steeped in that history. That means Jeff's probably more qualified to talk to you about that than me, because he knows a lot more about that side of the club than I do. But I know that Bill Shankly was, and Jurgen Klopp's very similar. I mean, the two of them, it's amazing, really, that their philosophies are so entwined about football and about life, you know, and about the importance of the supporters and how they play for them. I think it's amazing. And as you said, it goes from Shankly to Paisley to Fagan to Dalglish, right up through all the managers that have been with the club. It's an amazing history. But see, I'm blessed that I was there right at the beginning, and I could see what was happening at Anfield. Even though I wasn't in the first team at that time, I was a young boy coming up and coming through into the reserve team, going with the first team once or twice as 12th man, which would now be substitute, and observing what was going on in the training, how they got fit, Shankly's beliefs, and that's all in the book, the behind-the-scenes stories that people wouldn't know, really. I've got a reasonably good memory still, fortunately, and sadly, a lot of my contemporaries that were with me then, a lot of them are either not here anymore, or they're suffering from, maybe illnesses which prevent them from writing about it or talking about it. So that's one of the reasons I did the book. Said to Jeff at the beginning, I'd like to chronicle this for the future. For my family, yes, it's a bit of a legacy for them, but so that people, when they read it, they can understand how it all came from, particularly that period, 1960, when Shankly came right up till now.
Jeff, as you're doing this book with George, and obviously you had written the history from back at the very beginning of the Liverpool football club, and so what kind was it very enlightening when George has this collaboration with you, really filling in the gaps of, because obviously in your book, you can't go over every detail in the last 100 years. So how was it when you start hearing these stories from George about that era and saying, man, this is great?
I mean, the thing that struck me straight away as soon as I started talking to George is that George had a particularly unusual window on that period of Liverpool's history. So there's been so much written about the Shankly period. There's been a number of books written, none interestingly in the last 20 years. Karen Gill wrote The Real Bill Shankly. But other than that, really, there haven't been many in the last 20 years. And obviously they tell the story, the glory, they tell the story of the great players and the great triumphs. But George's story was unique. George's story filled in the gaps, really. The sort of teething troubles of the Shankly period, the players who didn't quite make the first team, and really what George was providing me when I was having a conversation, when we were in the Shankly hotel, and we were both trying to pay attention to what each other was saying, but we had one eye on the television screen looking at the Villa game. As I was listening to George, I thought, this is an eyewitness account of the genesis of modern Liverpool, and that's what George has got really locked away in his memories, and he's such a wonderful storyteller. You sit down and listen to what he's saying. He's done the after dinner circuit as well, and he tells such wonderful stories. So really, my goal was to capture that on in black and white for people to read forevermore, and to capture the kind of passion and the sense of wonder, really, as he's I mean, there's a piece in the book, and again, I won't reveal too much. There's a piece in the book which George actually knew and spoke to, and has stories about Ephraim Longworth, who's Liverpool's longest-serving player, who played in the 1914 FA Cup final. Was a captain of Liverpool and played in the untouchable side of the early 1920s. George met this guy and knew him, and so the book is an absolute treasure trove, and a real window on the birth of modern Liverpool. It is true Liverpool's been here for 128 years, but we'd won 5 trophies before Shankly arrived, and we've won something like 48 now. And there's not a better illustration of the impact of that man than I've not seen it. You know what I mean? It's and so what you'll get in this book is an eyewitness account of all of that. What the club was like, what it looked like behind the scenes, what it felt like, what it smelt like, and what it sounded like. And it's an incredibly emotional experience listening and writing it down and telling the story. And I think readers will feel exactly the same way.
Hey, George, you had mentioned the Shankly Hotel. I happened to be in Liverpool quite a few years ago when they remodeled And did you have anything, any input on the kind of things that they were putting on the walls, the historical things on the walls? Were you, or
Yeah, I
have
did.
you been there and looked at it?
Yeah, well, what happened in the beginning when the hotel was being created, Chris Carline, Bill's grandson, Chris, he's a director of the hotel, and it was 3 years ago, I think, 3.5 years ago, they were running a competition for people to write to the hotel about their experiences with Bill Shankly. It could be anybody, the local postman, kids who played with him in the grass outside his house, people that he paid for tickets on the trains, just anybody with a story. So I dropped the story in, and Chris asked me to come in and record a video. What they were doing, at that time, as the hotel was being developed, they were putting a video on each, in a television in each room, which represented the story which they put on the ceilings of the room. So the idea was, if you've got 50, 60 rooms, I don't know how many they've got, there's a story on every ceiling at Liverpool, someone they knew Shankly is, right from Keegan and people like that down to the local, as I say, the local postman. And I did this interview. It was quite an emotional interview. I struggled to get through it at the end. And I couldn't believe I was sitting talking to Bill's grandson. I mean, you look at him, it's like a reincarnation, really. He looks like him, you know. But so that went quite well, I thought. So that's when I got first in touch with the Shankly Hotel. Subsequent to that, I was able to do an after. See, when Jeff related to after dinner speaking before, I don't do after dinner speaking for money. I do it for charity, for lymphoma research. My wife sadly developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2009. She's wonderful now and completely recovered, but it was very desperately close. So I decided to use the Shankly stories to raise money for the Lymphoma Research Trust for blood cancer. So I've raised about £11,000 for that now. So one of the ones I did was at the Shankly Hotel. It was for the London branch of the Liverpool Supporters Association. They were celebrating their 50th anniversary. I think it was the 50th anniversary. And a lot of them came up by coach. So they had this function at the Shankly Hotel. So I did a speech there. And Peter Moore actually was on the same table at the time. He had to go off early. So fortunately for him, he missed the speech. But it was a great night. So I have had dealings with the Shankly Hotel from time to time. And we meet up there occasionally just to meet friends and old players and things. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a bit difficult for them in the last recent months with this COVID pandemic for all the hotels. My heart goes out to all of them, really. But I'm sure they'll all get through it. But, yeah, so, I mean, that's my main sort of contact with the Shankly Hotel. In fact, Chris Carline asked me for a copy of the book, and he's currently reading it. So it'll be interesting to see what his impressions are.
About a month ago, we had George Sefton on,
Yes.
Obviously the voice of Anfield, and it's always interesting to bring somebody on that can bridge the gap between the older days, but also, you know, the last phase of when we were really a successful team in Europe and in England, and then it's still there today, and now seeing this renewed procession of hopefully a elongated dominance of the club. And so can you want to talk about how it went for those 30 years, and then how you feel now about, you know, us finally getting back up to where we belong?
Well, as I said earlier, I think Jurgen Klopp mirrors Shankly. I mean, even the way they play is very similar to that great team of the 60s. You know, Shankly had players up front, talented players like Roger Hunt. Ian St. John was like Firmino. You know, Hunt was maybe a little bit like Mane, striking and scoring goals. Mm-hmm. And you had classic players on the wings. Thompson, one of the best players I've ever seen. Ian Callaghan. I mean, nobody will ever play as much games as Ian for Liverpool. He played 850 games or something. It's incredible. And if anybody ever said to Shankly, why am I not in the team? He says, hey, ask Ian Callaghan. He'll tell you why you're not in the team. Because he never plays a bad game. You know, so, I mean, they were all legends, as they are today. And so Jurgen Klopp, he's got a picture of Shankly in his office. Mm-hmm. So I know exactly what he feels. And Peter Moore as well. Peter Moore watched Liverpool from he was a child.
Right.
He lived in Garston, which is a suburb of Liverpool. He was on the Kop watching Liverpool right through from 1959 when he was a small child. So he's got a lot of resonance with Liverpool's history and Shankly. So there's a lot of tie up there. I mean, this season, and I'm sure Jeff's book captures this brilliantly. It's been stunning, unbelievable. Can you imagine world champions, European champions, you know, Premier League champions. There's nowhere else to go. Maybe win the League Cup next year as well. You know, and it's just fantastic to be a Liverpool fan. It's so disappointing that we weren't able to get out there and do that parade, get in that stadium, support the boys. But nonetheless, it can't take away any of the hit. It was fantastic. And I was waiting for them to win this league for years. And I kept saying to my two boys, I'll be gone before they win. I hope they get it before I go up that elevator to join Shankly and the boys up on the five-a-sides. And yeah, they did it, didn't they? So I can relax now.
Yeah. you know, you'd probably would still be playing if they had these type of boots when you were playing.
Well, hey, my boots were all right, by the way. I used to play with Puma boots or Patrick boots, you know. They were all right. People said to me, what was a heavy ball like? We didn't have a heavy ball. That was in the 50s. In the 60s, the ball became lighter, you know, but we didn't have the same conditions. Right. I mean, in part of the book, I describe Anfield as it was, the playing surface, the pitch, the dressing rooms, everything. And young kids of today will be amazed. I mean, they're playing in slippers now, aren't they? Mm-hmm. You know, they're playing with these little light boots with a light ball and grass like Wembley Stadium. I mean, the only grass that was in Britain in those days was Wembley. Mm-hmm. Wembley was like all the pitches are now. It was like Augusta and the Masters, you know. And now it's fantastic. But in those days, you had the goalmouths were just mud. I mean, how people like the old players, Tom Finney and Stanley Matthews, managed to play in these pitches was incredible. And there's stories in the book about Shankly with Finney and funny stories about Bill. And also, as Jeff said, he said, I think it was an emotional experience for him. By God, it was an emotional experience for me. When I read the finished book, even my wife was in tears at the last chapter. And that says something, isn't it? You know, it really tugs at the heartstrings, some parts of it. You know, for me anyway, definitely. I hope it does for other people.
You know, in Jeff's book, he has pictures of the old pitches in there. And I look at them and go, how did they play in those? How did they get the results and you know, and play the magical football on mud, in the mud, practically every game, right? So
and don't forget, you know, you had no protection like there is now. We didn't have 20 cameras every game. If you're lucky, you had one camera in black and white. Usually, you didn't have a camera, so there was a lot of you know. Tommy Smith was brilliant. Tommy was fantastic. Tommy was my minder in the reserves.
Yeah. Are you saying there was a lot of off the ball stuff back then when there was only one camera?
There certainly was. You can take my word for that. In little dark corners of the pitch, you know. No. I mean, Tommy used to go up and have a quiet word, you know, and I used to get space, you know. I mean, some of the young lads today probably don't remember who Tommy Smith is. I hope they do.
Oh, they should.
Scored the winning goal in the European Cup final, amongst many other things.
That's why we like to have these authors, you know, that are like Jeff coming on, and we had Keith Salmon on before, and obviously Kieran with his historical society, because you hear these names and you want to understand the importance, you know, of them and just where they are in the history of the club. So yeah, it's always good to reinforce it, and hopefully that every time we do a show or mention a book, someone will go and buy it and learn more. So
absolutely, yes.
George, do you miss the magic sponge in the bucket?
Well, never mind the magic sponge. You know, Ruben Bennett was a fantastic character, and I talk about Ruben a little bit in the book as well. And as one little story I can give away, perhaps, that Ruben used to say to us, went down, he said, if you played where I played, son, up in Aberdeen, we played on cinder pitches, and they didn't come on with a magic sponge. They came on with a wire brush to scrape the scab off your leg, and you got up real quick. Now, the magic sponge was, there's another couple of good stories in that vein as well, but as I say, I don't want to sort of jump ahead.
Well, I'm sure those buckets never got changed either. Same water, same magic water as well.
Smelling salts, that's what they wanted. Smelling salts under the nose. Did the job.
So I wanted to ask also, like, you know, a lot of people think Klopp's very, you know, Shankly-esque. Just in, like, he's brought the belief back to Liverpool, and not just the football club, but the city as well. What do you think about that?
Well, I think he gets it. I think he totally gets it. I think he's an absolute perfect fit. I don't think you can manufacture a manager more suited for Liverpool. And it's proved by the results. I mean, results talk, doesn't it? And that's it. He said 4 years ago, and it was so funny, he said, I'm the normal one. And then he said, in 4 years' time, he said, I'll have the Premier League here. Just give me time. And he's done it. So there's nothing else to say, really, you know. And you can see by the players, the warmth they've got for him. You can see the atmosphere in the club, you know. And they've got hugely talented players. I mean, God, you know, some of those boys are so talented. And Klopp keeps them on an even keel. And they seem to be a happy group. They don't seem to have any big fights or anything like that, you know. It's much easier when you're successful, of course. But, no, I think it's wonderful what Jurgen's done for the club. And I hope he stays a lot longer as well, you know. I'm sure he will. Yeah. No,
I mean, what I would say, in Liverpool, is comparing a manager to Bill Shankly, people are really nervous about doing that because he's such an iconic figure for the club. His impact has been so monumental, and especially after just 4 years. But it's becoming increasingly impossible not to make the comparisons between Klopp. Clearly Klopp started from a higher base, didn't he? So Shankly took over, Liverpool were in the second division, and the board seemingly with very little ambition. Whereas Klopp's took over, Liverpool were kind of mid-table in the Premier League and a sleeping giant. Liverpool were anything but a sleeping giant when Shankly took over. He turned them into a giant. But certainly in terms of his immediate recognition of how important the culture of the city is, his immediate understanding of how he needed to galvanise the supporters, and his belief, his absolute fundamental belief in collectivism. I saw him getting interviewed the day after we'd won the Premier League, and he was asked the question about, the team is the star, not the player. And he came out with a line. He said, well, yes, the team is the star, but the players are important within that. And, they all have a job to do. And that reminded me of a Shankly quote where Shankly said, I drummed it into my players. If they work as a team, they will receive individual rewards. And, this many players who play for me are internationals, but they're only internationals because they played as a team. So both Shankly and Klopp saw how a team is important, but a team is a collection of individuals. And I think that's so important. But also, I think the other thing that Klopp's got that maybe Shankly didn't do, and maybe no manager since has done, is Klopp has this ability to go toe-to-toe with the supporters. There was that moment against Crystal Palace where, we were losing and the ground was empty in 10 minutes, and he really saw this was a low point for Liverpool. And he came out and he said, I felt very alone. No one should be leaving before the end of the game. We can still win games. We can still come back. And he actually told us off. And what was fascinating about that for me was not only did we all say, okay then, but we actually all looked at ourselves and said, no, he's right. He's right. We need to be listening to what Jurgen said. And so Klopp and Shankly, and George brings this out in the book brilliantly, are just incredible communicators. The communicators on another level. They're able to really drill down into what motivates people on an individual basis and say what's necessary for that individual. What they say to George might be different to what they say to another player, but they say the right thing for the right player. And in that sense, they are transformational leaders. Both men have transformed both the culture of the club and the performance of the club. And Shankly had a generational impact. We can only hope that Jurgen does too. But there are some tremendous similarities for me.
Definitely.
Yeah, and if you recall when you're speaking about the camaraderie of the team, they are so close knit that when Jurgen jettisoned Sacco to Crystal Palace. And then there was an opportunity in that January to bring him back, and Klopp didn't bring him back. And we needed some coverage at the center back. And he's like, no, I'm going to go with the guys that are here, that have shown that they're committed to the team. And so that was kind of my first indication that he was building something that was going to be bigger than an individual, and that, you know, we weren't going to go after superstars just to get superstars. We were going to get people that were going to be part of a system that buys into the way he wants to play, and that they weren't going to overpay, and they weren't going to just do things just to do things, you know, or what the conventional wisdom was going to be.
And for me, for me, that thing about Klopp saying we're not just going to buy superstars, we're going to buy players who fit into the way we play, who fit into the culture of the team, who are the right people with the right brains. That reminds me so much about Paisley's era. Mm-hmm. You know, Paisley would sign players, and he's probably had the best eye for a football player of any manager in my lifetime. He would buy players who he could trust on the pitch, mm-hmm. who, you know, if it wasn't going well during the game, they wouldn't look to the bench for instruction. They'd figure it out for themselves. And that's a tremendous knack, really, I think. And I think Klopp has that too. You know, he buys people not just because of their skill. He said, actually, you know, if you have talent and nothing else, you will always be just a talent. Mm-hmm. But if you have talent and attitude and the brain, then you will be a superstar. And I think that's a model that will take us a long, long way.
Yeah, there's a picture in the back of the book of the squad that Shankly inherited, the very first squad that he inherited. And within a year, half of them had gone. At least 20 of them had gone. And Bill Shankly was a lovely man. He was a kind man beneath it all. But he had a ruthless streak in him when he needed to be. I mean, even when the great team of the 60s were coming to the end in 1970, he had no hesitation in breaking them up. It broke his heart to do it, but he had to do it. And so I think that Shankly's legacy is brilliant in any business. It's how you actually get to move a business forward. In his case, it was a football club. You find the people that can do the job, you keep them, and then you find the people you want to add to them, get rid of the ones it's no good to you, sad as it may be, bring in the ones that will improve the ones you've got, coach them, train them, motivate them, and move forward from there. And then if you've got the right players in the right positions, with the right enthusiasm. Shankly said to me once, 3 quotes, I think, live with me. One is, he used to say to us, natural enthusiasm is the greatest thing in the world, son. Without it, you are nothing. And he also said, you've got to make things happen. You get nothing for sitting still. Now, that's been in my brain for 50, 60 years. And if I've ever faced with a problem, I go back to those quotes. And I'm sure Jurgen's very similar to that as well.
I love that.
Are you still there? Yeah.
No, go ahead, Jules.
No, I didn't know whether you were still there. I could see Jeff's pretty face on the screen, but he was listening intently, but I thought I may have lost you 2 points there. You're back now anyway. Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, that was what point I was making was, as Jeff was saying, a manager's job is basically to move on people when you take on the role that are not going to be the right people for you. You have to assess them and then bring in people that will be, that you can play with and complement the squad. And then, you know, train them. And training at Anfield, even when I was there, was fantastic. Bob Paisley and Ruben Bennett and Joe Fagan. It was like a choreography. It was fantastic. I mean, nobody else did it. They put the shooting boards in, which nobody had ever done. And the players were in little groups doing these. It was way ahead of the time. I mean, you know, I went to Melwood with Gordon Wallace and a lad from Sweden, a lovely lad called Andy Bear, who runs the Stockholm Liverpool Swedish supporters club. He came over and Peter Moore allowed us to take him to Melwood. And I hadn't been back to Melwood for 40 years, maybe once. And the transformation was stunning. When I was there, it was just a cricket hut and about 4 pitches. And Shankly relayed the big pitch in front of the pavilion, so it was like Wembley. And it was his pride and joy. And one day he put a notice saying, in future, only players with 5 caps allowed on this pitch. But he was joking, he took it down. In those days, that's all it was. And now they've got banks of computers, they've got plunge pools, they've got the last word in luxury, a restaurant which is as good as the Ritz, best, most nutritious food. They've got machines all over the place. The players are everything's getting tested, the breathing, the recovery. It's a whole, they've got guys in computers looking at screens for football. In my day, you went in, you trained, and you played. That was it.
And then you went to your job.
No, we didn't have a job. No, that was a job. We went had a game of snooker.
Oh.
have a pint of a ciggy.
Then went down, then we put our Liverpool blazer on and chatted up the girls in town.
Hey, that's what I do. Anytime I visit Liverpool, I just put a Liverpool jacket on and chat them all up too. So.
By the way, that was before I got married. I've been married 50 years.
Yeah, me too.
I hope my wife's watching YouTube.
Sure, Steve, sure.
They love the accent over there. I'm going to tell you that right now.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How come you became a Liverpool fan?
George is turning it around on you now.
Oh, me?
Yeah, you, Steve.
Okay, well, I became a Liverpool fan in 1996 just because it was one of the few teams that were showing on TV over here in the United States at that time. So just kind of gravitated to that team and like the way they played. The successes weren't there at that time, but that I just said, okay, this is the team I'm going to support. And as the years have gone by, I've just gotten more and more into it. I've been to Anfield about 6 times. And anytime they come over to the United States, I try to go see them. So, obviously I'm the president of the sports club here and just try to, spread the word as much as possible. And, we had Peter Moore at our club 2018, right after the Munich game. His wife is from this area, his wife's family. So they came to our pub. He did his PowerPoint, and we had a good discussion about expanding the fan base of Liverpool.
Yeah.
Just through social media and kind of where it was going to expand, into Africa and Asian market, and it was very fascinating. And from a business guy with a business background, all that. The business stuff is just as fascinating to me as the stuff that's on the field, right? And so I just, I kind of take it personally to spread the word and to show that you can support this team and really get into the history, because it means a lot, and especially if you're for Liverpool, how it's so connected. The football club and the city are so connected that it makes it a special experience. So,
well, actually, Peter Moore he got in touch with me last week and asked me to send him a copy of the book. And funny enough, he only lives about 4 miles from where I live. He doesn't live far.
Nice.
So I've sent the book to him, and he'll be reading it as we speak.
Make him pay for it, George.
No. He's paid for it 100 times over.
Yeah, that was I kind of was very sad to hear that he was leaving his position as the CEO, because when he came over there, when he went, it's like everybody's fantasy to go out in the world and then come back and then start to work again for your boyhood club. And, obviously he's been a successful CEO at other places, and it was good to see him back and having a Scouser voice on the executive board. So we're definitely going to miss him over there.
Well, he couldn't leave on more of a high, could he? I mean, he's getting out right at the top.
I'm going to nominate Jeff for the CEO since he's local.
Yeah, I'll take that. Not a problem. Yeah, I'll take the CEO. The club would be bankrupt in 6 months, though. That's the only problem. Because I'd have bought Messi, Neymar,
and Mbappe.
Jurgen would have resigned because I was buying all the players, and it wouldn't be a good idea.
Hey Jeff, they wouldn't get in the team at the moment.
No, that's a good point, George. Yeah, there aren't many players in the world who displace the first 11 at Anfield. I don't think.
No.
That's the interesting thing about this transfer window. You know, the season is going to start in 2 weeks already, and which is just mind-boggling, right? We just ended the season. We're about to start, but people don't seem to think in their high head like, okay, we bring this player over. Okay, you're not thinking about the weekly wages, how that will disrupt what the current wages are. You're not going to bring in somebody that's not a guaranteed starter going to make more than Van Dijk. You know,
exactly.
You're not guaranteed a spot. I mean, who are you going to take out? This team has won all the trophies in the last 12 months. Why would you just take somebody out just to bring somebody in? You know, and so it's one of those things that, to me, trying to be look at it from a global viewpoint, a lot of things don't make sense. You know, let's get this guy. Like, where's he going to play? How are you going to pay him? You know, why would we pay this much money when, you know, so it's interesting. That's why we have a podcast.
What I would say to that is there's a whole new dimension now, isn't there? Because it's ever been thus that, you know, football fans in the transfer window, football fans of all clubs, are absolutely desperate for the team to go out and buy the next big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they want to spend massive amounts of money and they want to rival Man City and Chelsea and all of the others. But, you know, that's for the reasons you've just given there, that's not always the right thing to do. And I think actually Klopp and FSG have demonstrated perfectly that that's not the right thing to do. That it's actually about buying the right players for the right position with the right attitude. There's a whole new dimension now, isn't there, with COVID-19 and the impact on the economy, the impact on the game, the fact that clubs are losing massive amounts of money. We've had Arsenal in the UK making 55 staff members redundant. Liverpool have placed staff on furlough. You know, how and they've had conversations with the first team about taking wage deferrals and wage reductions. How do you do that and then go out and offer someone £300,000 a week, or you know, pay £100 million for a player who might not play every game? And so I think we have to be a bit realistic that things have changed. Football has changed and may be different for some time yet. And I mean, there will be teams that buck the trend. You know, see, City have already gone out and spent. But, you know, we have to be a bit sensible about this. And, you know, it's about buying the right players, the players you need, not just about going. And I understand the argument. Graham Souness said, you know, immediately in the aftermath of winning the title, in his day, you went out and you bought from a position of strength. You bought when you were winning. And that's absolutely right. But this is different. These are different times. These are, you know, complicated times. And I don't think the same rules apply anymore.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, George.
I think next year as well, the African Nations Cup's not going to be running, I don't think. So we're unlikely to lose Mane and Salah as we did last year for 6 weeks or 2 months. But Liverpool probably, you know, can go with the same squad again. They've got some young players coming through, quite exciting players as well. There might be a little bit light up at the front if one of the front three or two of the front three get injured. Basically got Origi there, but you know, young Curtis Jones is coming through, so they could probably get away with it at the moment, as Jeff says, because of the current situation with COVID and the economy and no fans in the ground. They have to be very careful. I mean, Chelsea spent 70 million on Werner, Tino Werner. Yeah. It's a lot of money to spend on a player in these troubled times at the moment.
Well, you know, to me, you listen to what's happened or look at what's social media, and then you go, same people that are wanting all these players to be bought, you know, they don't look at the financial aspect, but then they'll complain that, you know, we're not promoting from within, right? From the academy and giving the opportunities to Jones and Elliott and Ryan Brewster. And you just have to look at where Trent is at this moment, the best right back in the world. You know, if under another coach, if he was at Chelsea, he'd be loaned out 3 or 4 times already, you know. So you have to look at everything and just not make you're so pigeonholed in your viewpoints. And that's why, you know, Darren and I, we always try to talk to people, say, hey, calm down, look at everything. It's not just about this, it's about these things that are also affected. There's domino effects on every decision that's made, you know, and it's easy for us to be on the other side of the keyboard and say, yeah, we need to get this person.
Yeah.
But hey,
I
that's
blame
not the way it is.
I blame it on FIFA manager.
Me too. Yeah.
Too many kids playing FIFA. Klopp, he's come out and said, like, how would he explain to Virgil or Mane when he's just, to take a pay cut and then pay Werner 50 mil on 200 grand a week? You can't. That'd be a slap in the face. That's what I love about Klopp. Like, of course, before the pandemic, Timo would have been straight in that squad. We would have bought him. But times have changed. I think people have to look at the bigger picture. That they've just got blinders on at the moment. They're like, we've won everything, but in order for us to win it again, we've got to buy all these top players, but we don't. Because again, if a top player comes in, yes, again, Klopp will say he's talented, but if he's not got that mindset, if he's not a team player, if he's got flashy cars and all this, or like Pogba, yes, he's a good player. Do you think he'd play for Liverpool? I don't. It'd mess up the dressing room.
Yeah.
So,
and also, we've not just scrambled over the line, have we? We won the league by about 20 points.
Yeah.
So we've got a bit of spare there. You know what I mean? It's not like as if we just scrambled in by a point or a goal difference. So, I mean, with this squad, there's no reason why they should go backwards. They should go forwards. They've got the confidence now of being the champions. And I'm sure they'll continue to do what they're doing, to be honest, without too many additions.
Yeah.
And I think people have to think as well, no wonder City and Chelsea and United are going to be spending money. It's because they need to catch up to us.
Playing catch up, yeah.
That's why, but, a 50 million, 60 mil player, and now we're hearing about the Greek lad for 13 mil. Like, if Klopp wants him, then we should all go, then trusting Klopp, right? That's the thing. I do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's kind of my act. I mean, like last season, I think I wrote this in the new book. Like last season, we bought nobody in the summer, did we?
No.
We got Harvey Elliott. I think we sorted out his tribunal deal or something like that. But we didn't really. Minamino came in January, and I don't remember too much unrest or dissatisfaction, because actually we've got a manager we can trust, we've got a team we can trust. I mean, one of the features of going to Anfield over the last 4 or 5 years is seeing the transformation in atmosphere and attitude of supporters. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that you go to Anfield and if the team went 2-0 up after 20 minutes, you get all the groans and the grumbles, and if a ball was a misplaced pass, people would be off their seats shouting. And now the team can go a goal down. It doesn't happen very often, but the team can go a goal down. And really the feeling is, yeah, we'll turn this round. It's not a problem. We can trust these players and we trust this manager. And so I agree with you completely. If he thinks this Greek lad, is the right fit, then he's the right fit. End of story. He's earned that. He's earned that right as a manager now. He's won everything. So no one should be doubting his judgment. And I know there'll be people saying that, it's FSG and, Klopp wants these players, but FSG won't let him have them. I just don't buy that. I just don't think that that's the relationship he has with the ownership. I think it's a real team. And, I think these decisions are made collectively. And I think Klopp gets it. I think, after all, he managed Dortmund, where he had to lose his best players at the end of every season.
Yep.
So there's no way that Klopp is being, undermined by the ownership. If he says things are okay, they're okay.
He would have left.
Absolutely.
Klopp would have left. He wouldn't have signed a new contract if he thought FSG were pulling a fast one on him. So
that's right.
Me and Steve just try and like instill this into people. Like, it's not FSG's fault. Like, stop this rubbish. It's not. Klopp picks, and then he talks to Michael Edwards, who is an absolute genius. Like, that man just, I mean, he to me, he's on level, like Klopp's level, like his wheeling and dealing. Like, obviously, they've looked at this Greek lad for a while. You know, they're not just going to pick him out of a hat and go, all right, he's 13 mil, we'll take him because we didn't get Jamal. No, they've been looking at him for a while. So I do get tired of the FSG haters. I do. I think they've done nothing but like the best for this club.
Well, look what FSG said when they took over the club. Everything they've said has come true. I mean, they've built the Anfield Road stand. They've kept the club at Anfield. They've won all the trophies they said they would win. They've got the best manager in the world. There's nothing that they said they wouldn't do they haven't done. So how could anybody? I mean, they've got a big franchise in the States over there where you boys are with the baseball. And I was a bit worried when after Gillette and the other guy, I thought, oh no, here we go. But I mean, I don't know them personally. I only the same as any other fan. I hear what they say. You can't fault what they've achieved and what they said they would achieve, and they seem to be the right fit as well. So I have no complaints there.
What I would say, sorry. What I would say is they've made mistakes. They've made mistakes. So you know, the trademark issue was a mistake. The £77 for tickets was a mistake. You know, they've made mistakes, and owners make mistakes, and fans are well within their rights to voice their opinion and be critical of the ownership. But what's problematic for me is this kind of blind oppositionism, you know, to the ownership, and absolutely everything they do is mistrust. And I think that's actually a hangover from the Hicks and Gillette period, really. That's really made it a problem.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, Jeff. It seems like a lot of the FSG out is a residual negative effect from the Hicks Gillette. Yeah. And obviously, American group and then a new American group, so you're guilty by association. But you know, the FSG, and I'm historically a defender of them just because they kept us out of administration. They wrote a check at the very beginning to keep us out. They used their own money. They haven't used any tax money to build the stadium, and so, you know, they're not looking for handouts. They're not leveraging the debt like the Glazers do at Manchester United, you know, where millions and millions of pounds every year are going for debt service before they can even go back into the club. So we don't have any of that. Are they astute businessmen? Yes. Should we fault them for that? No, because you have to kind of look at it as a businessman and not as a fan. And it's hard to separate that, right? But they've delivered these trophies. They got Klopp, which was not just a cut and dry deal. You know, that was a process just to get Klopp on board as well. You know, there were meetings and meetings. You know, Ancelotti was available. A lot of people were calling for Ancelotti versus Klopp to come on board and get the ship righted at that time. And so, you know, you feel like they should have some carte blanche to move forward, but it wasn't even a day after we secured the Premiership title where everybody's already like, okay, what are you going to do for next year? Like, hey, let's celebrate. Let's get drunk first, and then you know, and then let's talk about it later. Let's party.
Yeah, but what Jeff said is true. Is they have made mistakes, but they've listened when they made a mistake and reversed it. With the furloughs, that was a big mistake, in my view. But the fans protested and they withdrew it. So, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I agree with what you say there, Stephen. They won the trophies. That's what fans want. They want success. I don't care what anybody says. The fan wants success on the playing field. And if you deliver that, you delivered everything for them, in my view.
Yeah, and you know, they put the infrastructure in place that there can be some sustained momentum moving forward. You know, upgrading the training facilities, obviously, over there, and I think they're very prudent businessmen. You know, and I wish I was as prudent with my personal finances as they are with the Liverpool finances. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Yeah, they've done well with Liverpool as well. Liverpool's value must have rocketed since they took over.
Yeah. So, and speaking of that, you know, obviously we're in with Nike now, or Nike if you want to say. But how do you have any Nike? That's right. Scousers say, we've already determined last week with James Pierce. Scousers say Nike. Everybody else says Nike.
I think that as well. Yeah.
But I'm of the opinion that it's a great business move, and I know a lot of people don't like them. And obviously LeBron James being a part owner as an American, I'm excited about that aspect. But I know a lot of people across the pond, they're kind of just like, he just owns 2%. What does he know? But I'm like, hey, he's more than just a basketball player. He has a $1 billion management company that is, has their tentacles in a lot of different media aspects. So it's going to be interesting, in my opinion, moving forward.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Nike are that kind of level kit maker, aren't they, that Liverpool have never been associated with. And so it kind of does feel like, in terms of commercial deals, this is Liverpool going on to a different level now. There are concerns about Nike's kind of business practices overseas and things, and some Liverpool fans are rightly, concerned about that.
Sure.
But I think from a commercial point of view, I think you're absolutely right. This takes Liverpool to another level. And actually, another example of Liverpool Football Club pioneering, breaking new ground in terms of deals and sponsorships, because this is a deal that on paper is the same or a little bit less than they were getting from New Balance, around £30 million a season up front. And yet, they're getting 20% of the profits on the sales. Yeah. So, that's groundbreaking, isn't it? And if the early indications are anything to go by, that's going to flood the coffers with lots and lots of money. And provided the owners use that resource to build a team, build the club, then I think fans will be on board with that. Really. My view on kits, by the way, when a new kit comes out, is I only really have two questions: is it red, and does it have a liver bird on the shirt? And if the answer to those two questions is yes, then I'm absolutely fine with it.
Brilliant. Me too.
I'm with you there, Jeff. Definitely. I don't like this. It's got to be red. I only wear red.
Yeah. But and with Nike also, just the fact that they have probably treble the amount of locations that you could buy Liverpool gear.
Yeah.
Is just going to be huge. And the signing of Minamino is going to just open up that Asian market even more. And there's a long-term plan with them, and which is great to see that it's just not rest on your laurels. We won this year. And because, I don't know, I'm sure everybody's seen the interview with John Henry this past week where he says, we've already set things in motion for 5 years down the road. It's just not this year that we are happy about. So
that's great.
Yeah.
George, I wanted to ask you a question, because you've got so many memories of Melwood, with Melwood coming to a close. That's got to be a little bit of a sad one for you.
It is, actually. In fact, there's a chapter in the book about that, really. It is a sad one because West Derby, I think a lot of residents in West Derby were disappointed because I think the feeling locally was it could have been a wonderful facility for the local people. Sports centres, the club sold it for housing development, affordable housing, which is admirable in one way, to be fair. But I've got a nice little quote in the book when I said that I hope the people that actually live in these houses can hear the voices of Reuben and Joe and Bob and Bill ringing through the walls as they did when I was there, because it's a holy ground as far as I'm concerned. And it's sad to be. But having said that, Kirby is a magnificent place. Mm-hmm. I've been to Kirby, and when you go up there, you walk around, it's amazing. They've got the photographs of all the ex-stars. They've got the coach of Shankly up there. Got a huge indoor playing arena. You've got acres of playing fields, a lovely stadium for the under-15s. The rooms have got rooms for different age groups. Got the 12-year-olds, the 10-year-olds, the 7-year-olds. This is Liverpool, the Liverpool way. It's all there. And it's a move forward. You're right, actually. It's sad for me, looking at the history. The people that have trod that turf over the years, the Rush and Dalglish and Souness and all these legends that trained there for you, right from Bill. I've got a wonderful photograph. I don't know if it's in the book. I don't think it is. But of us training, running around the outside. And in the background, you can see Shankly with the balls over his in a sack, and Paisley next to him, and Joe heading towards the shooting boards. And I knew what they were doing, where they were going. It was torture, you know. But it's a wonderful picture, you know. And there's another wonderful picture in the book. This one is in the book of a gang of us, about 10 of us, in front of the wall at Melwood. And I'm leaning forward on my knee because I'm a bit exhausted, just on the lap of the pitch. St. John's standing next to me like a ballet dancer. Looks like he hasn't broke sweat. The kids are all on top of the wall, little kids that have climbed up on top of the wall, looking at us. And Jeff Shankly in front of us with his hand up, coaching us. And it's a moment in time that was frozen. And it's a wonderful picture, and it's in the foyer at Melwood. And when I went to Melwood to visit, I was staggered to look at this photograph on the wall inside the foyer. It's the first thing you see when you go into Melwood, of that photograph of myself and Ian St. John, Ronnie Yates and Tommy Lawrence and a few of the other boys being coached by. That was 1962, I think, or 63, I remember.
Yeah, I was going to mention that one of the, you know, the romantic photographs of seeing little kids sitting on adult shoulders, looking over, watching the training sessions at Melwood, and then because at Kirby, you know, there's trees around. They're not really have that same type of atmosphere over there.
And a barrier. It's a barrier. You've got to show your identification.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different world now. I mean, there's so much. These players are so protected now, and it's quite right, I suppose. In our day, the kids would just, you know, Shanks would sign autographs at the gate, you know, and all that, you know. Be out in his car driving. Living in West Derby in a semi-detached house. Kids coming to knock on the door, you know. Nowadays, Jurgen's out in form, being it's different altogether.
I was going to ask you guys, Jeff and George, because I know you have the books coming out, but can you tell us your favorite Anfield moment or Anfield experience or game?
I mean, for me, my favorite, that's two, just two really. One, without any doubt, is winning the cup in 1965. When we beat Leeds United to win the cup for the FA Cup. Because you got to remember, in those days, the FA Cup was huge.
Right.
British television ran it all day. They had helicopters coming over the ground. They had player interviews. Every kid wanted to play in the FA Cup final. The history went back to 1917 or further back. And that, you know, 1923, the first game at Wembley. So that was massive. And for Liverpool to win that trophy, the Evertonians used to say that the liver birds would fly away if Liverpool ever won the FA Cup. And we did it that year, and it was a wonderful occasion. The Queen presented the cup to Ron Yates, you know, and we came back and won that game with Roger Hunt's Ian St. John's late header. That was there's a big chapter in the book about that, behind the scenes. And the other one was Istanbul, when I went with my son Gavin to Istanbul, and we were on the floor at half-time. To see that crowd sing "You'll Never Walk Alone" even now gives me goosebumps. And when we came back, and I see Gerrard running back to the centre circle with his arms running around like windmills. And later on, you hear the guy on the television saying, "Hello, hello." And he came back and won. I mean, it was incredible. 3-0 down against Inter Milan, the greatest team in Europe at that time. The way they played in the first half, I thought we were going to lose about 9-0.
Yeah. And
come away winning. And I phoned my wife from the stadium, and she was in the Philharmonic. And she was walking by the Philharmonic Hall in Liverpool, and they were showing the game on the screen. And she said to me, "Listen to this, George." And she held the phone, and you could hear the horns in Liverpool. All the horns in the cars, you know. And I said, "Don't worry, listen to this." And I held the phone up in the ground, and you could hear the Liverpool fans singing "You Never Walk Alone." So I don't know about Jeff, but these are my two. There's others as well, St. Etienne, Inter Milan, that's whole Dortmund, Barcelona. Jeff, what do you think?
Hey, Jeff, can I interrupt for a second? Because before you go in, it just reminded me when you were talking about, you know, that Crystal Palace game where the fans left. And I remember that game as well, being disappointed because of Istanbul, the power of "You Never Walk Alone." All those fans left before that song played at the end of the game. And it kind of, to me, it was like you're forgetting, you know, that we're all in this together. And and it was just, so, you know, you mentioned that earlier, and I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, that was disappointing that you would leave before "You Never Walk Alone" even is played at the end of the game. So, but anyway, sorry, I just wanted to mention that.
No, it's a really good observation, and I think that was a kind of watershed moment in the recent history of the club, really. The other one, of course, was a game against West Brom, where we fought back and drew against West Brom, and Klopp took the players to the Kop, and they did a bow in front of the Kop, and he took huge amount of abuse for doing that, particularly from Evertonians. Because why are you celebrating a draw against West Bromwich Albion at Anfield? But people were missing the point. This was Klopp reminding us yet again of who we are and what we're about. And we celebrate the moment. We celebrate the heroism of fighting back for a draw. That's why you stay till the end. So yeah, it's a really good shout. My favourite moment, my first game, and I kind of struggle to, because I don't remember anything about the game. It was 1976, I think. And I know because I've researched it. I think it was West Ham, and it was 2-2. But I was in the paddock, which was a standing area at the bottom, next to the pitch of the main stand, the old main stand. And I barely took any notice of the game because I was transfixed on the Kop. So I was just watching the Kop for 90 minutes, and the sight of the swaying and the noise, the sheer noise, the songs, and people being passed down overhead because it's so densely packed in there. People would pass out or be drunk, and they'd be lifted up and passed down to the front for the St. John's ambulance guys to look after them. And I was just absolutely mesmerised by that. And that whole experience of going to my first game at Anfield, being in the pub with my dad and his brother-in-law and all his mates from work, and feeling like I was part of something bigger than myself, that was an incredible experience, even though I don't remember much about the game. But of course, there's lots that you could actually say. There's so many moments at Anfield: Dortmund, Chelsea, St Etienne, as George said. There's so many. 7-0 against Tottenham in '78, when Tottenham had just been promoted and they bought Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa, and what they were going to do when they came to Anfield, and we absolutely blasted them off the park 7-0. I remember the Kop singing "What a Waste of Money," which wasn't cliched in 1978. It is a bit of a cliche now. But for me, despite all of the things I've seen, by far the greatest Anfield experience of my life, bar none, is the Barcelona game in 20. When we fought back from being 3-0 down in the first leg, we didn't have Salah. We lost Andy Robertson at half time. Jordan was playing with one leg.
Firmino.
And to score 4 goals against Barcelona without reply, and that feeling of full time of disbelief, euphoria, relief, tears flooding down your face while you don't know whether to laugh or cry or scream, not being able to speak for days afterwards because you'd spent 96 minutes or whatever it was shouting and screaming. That for me trumps everything that's gone before. And as George has, I've stood on the standing Kop. I've been part of some of the most incredible atmospheres, but that game against Barcelona trumps all of them. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm about to cry now just talking about it. And I actually, to be honest with you, I watched that Inside Anfield show about that night. I watched that last night again, so I was like, you can't. It doesn't get old.
I watched the commentary by LFC TV, I think it was.
Yeah.
Johnny Aldridge and his co-commentator.
Completely unbiased.
Incredible. Best commentary I've ever heard.
Yeah. Aldo is great, isn't he?
Yeah. I agree, Jeff. That was probably the top of the lot. And to see Messi's face at the end and Suarez's face, complete devastation. There's a wonderful photograph of Messi in the centre circle, looking like a little lost boy. Didn't know what hit him. Like lots of people coming to Anfield, they don't know what hit them. It's an amazing place. It sends them all home to be beaten.
Well, that picture of the ball boy with Messi as well at the end of the match was absolutely class. Like that kid needs his own statue.
Yeah.
If anyone was to ask you what is the spirit of Liverpool, what is it to be a Scouser? That kid running along the touchline, putting 2 fingers up to Lionel Messi, the greatest footballer on the planet. That's what being a Scouser is, because we don't bow down to anyone, do we? We don't stand and say, we'll recognise greatness, happy to recognise greatness, but when you line up against us on the pitch, all respect goes out the window, and and I think that's absolutely brilliant. That scene is absolutely brilliant. It encapsulates the whole evening for me. Yeah.
Well, even Elliot not even entertaining Real Madrid because of Sergio Ramos fouling, Salah in the Champions League. It's like, here's this kid who's 15 years old and already gets it. And he wasn't, lifetime Liverpool fan, obviously, but, coming to the club. And he's like, no, I saw what you did to my guy. I'm not going to talk to you, which was brilliant to me.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Well, even like during that match, when Robbo shoved Messi's head.
Yeah.
That's Robbo for you. Even afterwards, he went, he's the best player in the world, and he can't believe he did it. But that was Liverpool that night. They were like, "You've come to Anfield, we're 3-0 down, but we're going to give you a go." And like, I know if I met Messi, I'd probably be shaking. But Robbo's just like, get off. And that just shows Liverpool's mentality. But George, I want to ask you this because, my granddad took me to my first match when I was like 5 or 6. So I was one of those ones, on my granddad's shoulders, and then he'd pass me to the next one when he needed to go to the loo. But he always told me stories about Shanks, and growing up, I wish I could have met him, but you've actually met him. So, I do this because, I live through people like you. I do. I love the stories. They make my heart, just pound.
Well, to be honest, I still get goosebumps myself listening to some of the things that he said to me. One of the things I think of often is when I look at like Barcelona and games like that. When I was a kid of 15, I remember me and my dad, my stepfather, standing in the centre circle at Anfield, and Bill was showing us round because I'd just signed for the club, And he said to my father, he said to me actually, it was meant for my father's ears as well. He said, "You're very lucky to be here, son. This place is going to be a bastion of invincibility. They'll all come here and be beaten, every one of them." That's exactly what he said. And when you look now, you see what's happening at Anfield now, 60 years later, they're still coming here and being beaten, every one of them. And that all started with that attitude of, you've got to win. You've got to think you're the best in the world and go out and prove that you're the best in the world. In fact, he called me the 12th best player in the world. How stupid is that? He was the biggest exaggerator in the world, Bill. And that was his biggest exaggeration. But he said it for a reason, and the reason's in the book.
Hey, George, can you tell us a couple of things that he changed right away when he became the gaffer? Because you talked about different training things earlier, but what can you tell us some specifics on this change as soon as he got to the club?
Well, when he came in, what he started to build through the middle, like almost like a cross. Tommy Lawrence, he got Tommy in as goalkeeper. He bought Ron Yates, a bit like Virgil van Dijk, big dominating centre half. Mm-hmm. He bought Ian St. John, centre forward, and then he went to the wings, Callaghan and Thompson. And then he converted Tommy Smith from a centre forward to a half back. He put a number 10 on his back and played him in midfield to confuse people. He moved a lad called Tommy Leishman out and brought Billy Stevenson in, the culture left foot. He had Gordon Milne. He called Gordon Milne the fetcher and carrier of messages. He'd fetch the ball from the fullback and give it to the front man. He had Roger Hunt, who was a powerful striker. Mm-hmm. So he built a team of individual players with brilliance, all playing together. But the biggest thing, it's a bit like Klopp, he used to believe in moving the ball on. And he always used to say, the ball never gets tiresome. Move it on, get possession, pass it to a red shirt. And people like Phil Thompson came in. And that was, Phil used to just get the ball, pass it on. Mulby, pass it on. Don't dwell on it. And he used to say, let the star performers perform in the box. And he used to talk about people like Maradona. Not that Maradona was playing then, but in later years, small centre of gravity. People like Jimmy Greaves, Dennis Lowe. He said, if they get towards the goalkeeper, if the goalkeeper comes out, they go round him. If he stays in, they slot it past him. Ian Rush, they know exactly where the goal is. They don't just hit it aimlessly, they pick the spot. So it was a bit like Klopp in the sense that, keep possession, and when you lose possession, he always used to say, get it back, get back behind the ball again. He never relaxed, never allowed you to relax at any time. He was really, really ahead of his time in terms like that. These guys all got in the first team and stayed there because they were brilliant and because they continually worked hard. That was the ethos, work hard.
Did he, because, like Arsene Wenger, when he came to the Premier League, he changed diets and stretching habits and things like that. So I was just wondering if Shankly brought anything that was like, this is kind of peculiar, but we're going to listen to you. And then as it becomes successful, like, okay, that's the way to go from now on.
Well, he believed in the diet. I mean, we used to have a canteen, we called it. It's a restaurant now, it would be called, at Anfield. And when we used to train at Melwood, we all get on the coach and we'd come back to Anfield and then we'd have lunch. And the food was, by those standards at that day, was very good. He was a great believer in steak. Funny enough, Shankly, he was a steak man. He thought steak was brilliant.
Me too.
Funny yeah, he did. Yeah, fillet steak. No, I mean, he did. And he was very into fitness. He was very into... Bob Paisley was fantastic on that. He was a physiotherapist. And Bob was an amazing person as far as muscular injuries, getting players fit, treating them, And it wasn't like today. They didn't have the sophisticated training treatments they've got today. But, he could get people playing again quite quick. And he looked after the star players and made sure they were fit. That was important.
Yeah, it seems like it's weird to think of a time when there were no subs, right? Your first 11 was a team that you're going to get carried through, and now we have the 3 subs, and thankfully no water breaks going into the next season. But
that was a killer for me because I played about 120 games. I can't remember in the second team. And I scored 34 goals, and I played every week. But I couldn't get into the first team because there was no... Are you okay there? You all right? Yeah, so, I mean, that was a killer for me, the substitute rule, because none of us got a chance to get in unless somebody got injured. I went with the first team to Leicester City one time as 12th man, and Roger Hunt felt ill. And I thought he was going to go down with a sickness at the meal at lunchtime, and I would have been on. Because Shankly had nobody else to play. I was there to play if someone got injured. And sadly, he recovered. Fortunately for Liverpool, but unfortunately for me.
We talk about opportunities. We had Howard Gale on last week, and, we just talked about his opportunities and when he played in Munich. And I just think about some of the players that have played but didn't have those opportunities. And you think about, those players that if there would have been the ability to have 3 subs, what kind of impact they could have had on the team and had a even more of an impactful career with Liverpool if there had more appearances.
Well, it's not only 3 subs. I mean, when you go on European trips now, they have 18 players maybe go on the trip. They have 6 or 7 they can pick from, So there's no question in my mind, if the situation then had been as it is now, I would have been in. I would have. I was no doubt about it. I'd have been playing. But in those days, I mean, it was very difficult because they were all very fit. They rarely got injured. And Shankly had that famous quote when the reporter said, "What's the team, Bill?" He said, "Same as last season." I mean, there was no real opportunities. 1 or 2 people broke in. Jeff Strong got games. Gordon Wallace had a few games. Bobby Graham got a season later on. But there was very few people broke into that famous team. It was set in stone for about 5 or 6 years. And that's why Shankly let me go, because he knew that I was 20 years of age and I needed to move on to play in the first team somewhere else. I couldn't go on playing in the second team while those boys, all internationals, were still in their places. So I respected the fact that he let me go. And the way he did it, which you'll read about in the book, was incredible.
I mean, what I would say, George, is listening to you over the last 6 or 7 months and actually working with you on the book, is what's absolutely apparent throughout the book is how much Shankly valued players like yourself. And I think there's an interesting parallel with the modern game, really, because, you know, we had Jurgen Klopp describe Adam Lallana as a Liverpool legend. He, you know, was instrumental in Lallana getting an extension to his contract so that he could be present for the trophy presentation, which might be seen as a kind of sentimental thing, but actually isn't when you read between the lines and you understand what went on behind the scenes. The same with James Milner, really. You know, James Milner, the importance of those players today to the club goes beyond what they contribute on the pitch. It's about the effort they put in training, which drives the other players on and pushes the other players to another level. It's about their attitude in and around the dressing room. It's about their attitude on the coach and the bus and all of that, and buying into the ethos and the mentality. And what's clear to me is that Shankly saw you as one of those type of players, which was that you were utterly committed to the cause. That you worked hard in training. You, no matter how many times you were knocked and how many times the opportunity didn't present itself, you showed that natural enthusiasm that he valued so highly. And you just went again the next season. You went again and again, even though you'd not been given the chance. And I think Shankly valued players like you immensely. And I think Klopp's the same, isn't he? I think Klopp, if you turn up in training, he might not pick you for the first team, but he never forgets you if you show loyalty and you work hard. And I think that was you under Bill Shankly, wasn't it? I think that shined through in the book, really.
You know, Jeff, from how we've communicated about this. I mean, as far as Shankly's concerned, I do get quite emotional speaking about him because I was a young boy when I first came to Anfield and met him. But he looked after me my whole life, really, in a way. Yeah. Because he took me to Anfield, where I met my wife there. When I finished my time at Anfield, he recommended me to Aberdeen, where I had a nice signing-on fee and a good fee to go back to my hometown to play with my mum and the rest, and play in Aberdeen, which I always wanted to do anyway, because that was my first love. And when it didn't happen in Aberdeen due to injury, he actually recommended me to go over to South Africa. And when I played there for a couple of years, when it was time to come back, he recommended me to Tranmere Rovers and got me back into the British game on a personal level. So all the way along the line, my life has been, and my destiny has been controlled to some extent by his actions on my behalf. He gave me a reference, which is the most, you've seen it. It's the most amazing reference. Anybody, he's written a reference which says, "Dear people." I mean, most references say, "Dear sir or madam, to whom this may concern." This one says, "Dear people," for the world. And what's in the reference is in the book, so I'll let people read it. It's an amazing thing to have.
But what I would say to the listeners, though, as well, is that what becomes clear is how powerful Shankly's influence was. I mean, you hear this when you talk to supporters who met the man. You hear this when you read letters written to Shankly by school children and things, and you know his influence is all pervasive because, you know, you see it all around the club, don't you? But the remarkable thing about the man is that he was able to have a generational and a kind of cultural impact, but on an individual basis. The impact he had on you as an individual, which, you know, is throughout the book, it kind of guided the way you approached your career after football. It guided the way you approached your relationships with people. And, you know, you find yourself thinking, what would Bill say? And that is, you know, to me, listening to you talk about that, you know, that is remarkable, both in terms of him as a leader, but also you in terms of how you took that on board and identified very quickly that was the route to success and implemented it throughout your whole life to great effect. Yeah,
thanks, Jeff. You're right, I think. Yeah, thanks for that. Yes.
No, I think that's right throughout the book, and I think people will, if they're, you know, I've been deeply moved working with you on this, and I know people reading the book will, you know, they'll as one person said, they'll laugh out loud on some pages, and they'll be reaching for the tissues to mop up the tears on others. It's a fantastic story.
You know, Jeff, you mentioned just the link from Shankly to Klopp, and I think indicative of that is what he came out and said, hey, these players, even if they don't get enough appearances, I am going to give them a league medal. And it just shows you the importance of whether you're in the first team or you're training against the first team, that you're part of this social aspect, and it's an ultimate team game, right? The first team is not going to get better unless they're challenged in practice.
That's right.
Who's gonna challenge them in practice?
Yeah.
It's Harvey Elliott, it's Curtis Jones, it's Kajana Hover, Nico Williams. They're challenging them. Otherwise, you know, it gets complacent. And so for him to come out and say that they're going to get a medal, and then you relay the story about Shankly and George, you know, saying that he's just as important. You see the link, and it's amazing to be able to look back and hear these stories of Shankly and apply them to present day, because, you know, granted, there are a lot of new fans since Klopp came, right?
Yeah.
But now they can say, hey, here's Klopp, and we're hearing about the Shankly guy. Let's go learn more about that. And George, you know, it's going to be amazing when the book comes out. We're obviously looking forward to it. You know, we like we mentioned before, we've been speaking for about a month, and we want to get the word out. And so let us know. Can you let the viewers and the listeners know how we can pre-order the book, please?
Yeah, well, you can pre-order the book currently on Amazon through the internet. I'm not sure about the American side. I mean, there are a couple of internet agencies for America. I understand, like Jeff said with his book, it's probably not going to be out in America until 1st of December, I think. I don't know quite why that is. Maybe just to do with distribution.
Yeah, we're going to try to work on maybe getting some pre-sales. So
we'll try and get some pre-sales out to you. Jeff and I will work on that with the publisher, definitely. And we really appreciate your support. We really do, you know, because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a story it'd be nice for people to get access to. In the UK, it's launched on the 21st of September, and it'll be in all big bookstores then, just as Jeff's book is. So he's been a busy man, and he's a wonderful writer. I mean, I can't say that enough. I mean, he just blows me away the way he puts things together. And I'm sure his book's going to be an absolute humdinger. Yeah,
I'm enjoying his Red Odyssey books right now. So.
Yeah, well, exactly. Red Odyssey 1, 2, 3, Stanley Park story. I mean, that brings the tears to your eyes. I've read Stanley Park story about 3 times. Even my son likes it, and he's an Evertonian. I shouldn't have said that.
But, you know, for your book, I mean, and Jeff's also, you know, there's a lot of the Evertonian history that has to be part of the Liverpool history. So, you know, for being an American, you know, you just accept it that without Everton, there's no Liverpool, right?
Well,
so
I put my mask to the colours. I do love Everton. I love Everton. Nothing like as much as I love Liverpool, obviously. But I was friends with a lot of the Everton players when I was playing. Colin Harvey and all these boys we used to talk about together. Everton's a wonderful, big club. No, but they're 50 points behind Liverpool in the league at the moment.
Yeah, and you just think about Ancelotti. Did you really know? And it's not like they didn't spend any money. They've spent a ton of money in the last 2 years too.
Yeah, they deserve to be successful. In all seriousness, I mean, when I was there in the 60s, they were an amazing club. I mean, they had some wonderful players in the 60s. It's really amazing. They were the money bags. They were the money men of Merseyside. John Moores was the chairman, and they had Handel Carr, Ball, Alan Ball, Ali Young. They were fantastic, you know. And I'd love to see them come back again. As long as we win the European Cup, they can win the FA Cup.
That's right. Well, you know, guys, we really appreciate you guys coming on. I know it's a Sunday evening there for you guys, and we really appreciate you carving out the time and talking about your books. And I know, speaking on behalf of Daz, we can't wait to read them and learn more about it. And we're so happy to have established this friendship with you guys in the past few weeks, and we look forward to staying in contact.
Same goes for us, I'm sure, and from Jeff as well. Thank you very, very much indeed. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. Appreciate coming on.
Hey, I had one more question for Jeff. Do they just call it rabbit in Wales?
Welsh rarebit he's talking about.
Rarebit. Welsh
They just call it rabbit. They just call it rabbit.
Welsh is a language that has no vowels. It's just all consonants. I don't know how they pronounce anything.
I'll see you next Monday, Jeff. A week Monday.
You will do.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Yeah.
Cheers, gentlemen. Thank you. It's been an honor to have you guys on our show. Thank you very much.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
See you now. Bye.
Bye-bye.